Hi, my name is Bennet and I'm a strategy concentrator in Vanderbilt MBA's class of 2018. For the next few minutes, I would like to give a few tips on how to best approach preparing for behavioral interviews. So the first tip is one that seems obvious. Know your stories really well. And of course, if you're going to be telling a story in an interview, it's presumably going to be yours in your own experience, so I feel like most people think they do know it pretty well. However, I would say spend the extra time to make sure that you could actually tell a stranger 15 to 20 minutes worth of your story. In an interview, you'll only talk for 90 seconds to 2 minutes. But if you can talk about a given story for 15 or 20 minutes, I think that shows that you've thought about it deeply enough to be able to answer any question the interviewer could ask. And depending on the interview, you could hear questions like, what were you thinking when you did this? Or how did this person react when you did this? Very small details that you might overlook if you just gave a cursory repeating of it. So I would say take the time, really try to understand the nuances of your story and think about the smallest possible details and what you were thinking at each juncture. That point leads me into my second piece of advice, and that's to really think deeply about your role in the story. I think it's easy to talk about team success and tell stories about how your company was successful because of something you did. But it's important to really claim ownership of every piece of success you've had. And that is, small wins within a story. That's also big results that stand out. But it's important to not be modest in these behavioral interviews. It's easy to feel uncomfortable talking about yourself or to not want to take full credit. I think that's the natural inclination for most people if it was reality. But in these interviews, it's the interviewer really wanting to understand you and how you think and how you operate and what you've done. So make sure that you're talking about your role and not the team's. Finally, the third tip I would offer is to think about your story in the shortest possible form. So be able to tell your story in 15 to 20 seconds. And I say this for two reasons. One, I think if you have a good understanding of your story and can make that concise synopsis, it shows that you've thought about the important things and you're thinking about it in the STAR format. So you think about situation, you think about task, you think about action, and you think about result. You want to have all four of those things on the tip of your tongue. And if you can repeat your story in 15 to 20 seconds, I think you've probably accomplished that. The second purpose for this is that I think in a lot of interviews, it really helps you to give that 15 to 20 second synopsis before you dive into the full story. I know there was one interview that I had that it was actually recommended that I do this so that the interviewer could then tell me whether or not they wanted me to continue telling the story. It actually turned out that one instance they didn't want me to continue, so I switched to another topic, and it actually ended up working out a lot better because the interviewer knew where I was headed with the story and made sure that it was going to satisfy the demands of their question. So I'd really try to work to have both that longer version that I talked about in the first tip, being able to talk about something for 15 to 20 minutes, but then also make sure you can package it in a concise way in about 15 to 20 seconds. Hopefully these help, and definitely make sure you spend the time on behavioral interview prep because I think a lot of times it's something that can go overlooked.